When we make our selection and go to distribution data, we find that we have number of rebar. And based on that, we can enter the number of rebars in front of us. So now I've entered my rebar as 5. If, for example, I enter it as 3, we see that it becomes 3. And accordingly, it shows up as 3 in my label. And in the BBS table, we'll also find that my number is 3. So when it comes to calculating the weight of the rebar I've entered, it takes the weight of a single rebar, which is 4.6, multiplies it by 3, and gives me the total weight for the rebars I've drawn in front of me. Of course, any change that happens to this number will automatically be reflected in the label, and at the same time, it will automatically refresh itself in the BBS. Accordingly, the value of my weight will also update. The other thing we can change in the distribution data is the spacing. So now, if I enter 400, we'll see that it appears in the label. If I change this to 200, you'll see that it automatically updates here at label. The value that I can also see in distribution data, or the other properties that I can view in distribution data, are these 3 at the top. These start to have an effect on me. If the rebar I have here is not linked to dotted rebars. So now, let's assume that this is a cross-section from the views in front of me, representing the distribution shape of this reinforcement in this other view. So this representation of reinforcement, I have about 17 dots drawn in this view. I start linking this rebar and the dots that were drawn in this other view by creating connect dotted rebar. It asks me to select the dots and then select the rebar. As soon as this linking process is finished, we find that my rebar has taken on the same numbering as the dots I have. So now we see that the number of dots that were drawn in this view, which is 17, has automatically been reflected in the rebar I have here. If we select it, we'll find that it really has become 17. And of course, we see that this number is refreshed in the BBS, and it also updates in my label. We also notice that if I link with a dot, the number above becomes 1, meaning that, for example, this rebar is linked to 1 dot, which means I can link to more than 1 dot. If I assume I have another layer which would also have 17, then I could link 2 dots to the same rebar. So in that case, we would find that the number of rebars here is about 34, which is 17 plus 17. If we look here, we'll see that the number of dots I'm linking with is 2, and the total number for this rebar is 34, which comes from the 17 that resulted from the 2 dots in the second view. I also have another property here, which is show linked rebar to dotted rebars. Show linked means that if, for example, I got confused and I'm not sure now, I clicked on the rebar. I saw that I am connected to 2 dots, but I don't know where they are. They got lost from me on the drawing. So I can view the link between the rebar I have and the dots I am connected to. So we find that it draws 2 virtual lines that connect or show a link between the dots I connected to and rebar. If I click no, this line starts to disappear. When I am connected between the rebar and the dots, the number that appears here is the total number of dots I have connected to. I can modify this number. Suppose I want to change this number manually again. For example, set it to 5. I have more than one solution. The first solution is that right now I have the number. The calculation mode is set to direct no. This means that the rebar number is set to direct I. The direct input method is being used no. So right now it takes the numbering from the dots. If I set the calculation mode to yes, then I can manually control the numbering of rebar. So now I can set it to any number I want to enter manually. But you'll notice that I'm still linked to the dots, but I'm no longer taking the value of the number that appears in them inside rebar. If I want to force the value of the number from the dots I'm linked to, I can simply change the connection or calculation mode from direct to no. At that point, it starts taking the numbers from the dots I'm linked to. You'll find that the number is now just 34 and I can no longer control it. It will automatically refresh inside the label and refresh inside BBS. There's another solution besides controlling the direct mode, which is whether I enter the number's value manually or not. The other solution is to delete the dots entirely from my work, or to remove the connection between the rebar and the dots that I drew. Of course, this deletion can be done in two ways. Either I delete, for example, a row. Let's say I delete this row. So if we look here, we'll find that now it's only linked to 1, just as normal, with its count set to 1. If I go and delete this rebar or the dots that are present in this view, we'll find that it has lost the connection to the dots I have, and my mode has reverted to direct. At that point, I can change my rebars directly without any problem. There's also another method I can use to change this linking process. There's a minus sign that appears here, and if I click on it, the linking process that was between this rebar and all the dots that were present is now gone. So we see that the dotted rebar connected count has become 0. This means that I'm no longer linking this rebar to those two. Even when I check the link, there's no link showing anymore. It's completely lost its connection to those dots. At that point, I can directly change the values of my rebar or the number of rebar easily without any problem.